Good morning and welcome. I'm your host, Bob Pace, and we're posed to discuss how to fight CPS and get our children back. We have a secret here. CPS is not your friend. And I don't mean to say that because I think it's the truth. When you get caught up in CPS, which stands for Child Protection Services, it will be a nightmare or turmoil of your life. They're not friendly. They're dishonest. They lie. They're so full of deception. They're not transparent. They're supposed to be an agency that protects children through abuse and neglect. And they're supposed to do family, bring back the family together. And if a parent did something wrong, there's supposed to be corrective actions that can happen. The goal is, of course, is the family. It's important to protect our children. It really is a hard thing to know of the horror stories of CPS cases. I like to go over a couple things, some housekeeping things here. This is a live podcast uh, on YouTube, and you find about it through Facebook. I'm talking to you from Southern California, and I do this 7 days a week, twice a day, at 10 o'clock in the morning and at 7 o'clock at night for 1 hour, and that's Pacific Standard Time. On Sunday, though, I start at 10:30 because of another show, so that's the only day I'm off. So that show on Sunday goes from 10:30 to 11:30. But having this show twice a day, um, we get sometimes some of the same people come in the room, which is good. I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you understand what CPS is about. I'm here to try to help you get your children, get your family back together. Those are important things. Now, the show is interactive, meaning that right now, as you listen, if you want to type in a comment about your situation, CPS, a good thing or a bad thing, it's great. Please put your name and a decent name, and doesn't have to be last. And then you want to put the city and state you're calling from, so I get a general idea what part of the country is. And of course, some of the viewers have been from other countries, so I need the city and the country there. And as you watch this show and you text a comment, you also should put your allegations and what children it involves and what your question is, or something you want to make a comment, nice thing, or a comment about somebody else. Because as people come in and go, you can write comments. It comes to me first, and if it's appropriate, I'll put it on the screen. Now, what I mean by that is I do get some comments that people are playing games in the room. They want to say they're somebody else, and they want to say derogatory comments. I'm not going to post those. Another way you interact with this room is be a guest speaker. And there's two ways you can be a guest speaker. One is you can call that number 626 698 0990. That's my office phone. It's active during the show. And you can call that number, and I'll put you live on the show here through my speaker phone, and everybody will be able to get to hear you, so you can be a guest speaker. If you're not ready to speak right now, but do want to speak in the future, you can pick one of my 14 shows and call in at 888-888-6582 and tell them that Bob Pace sent you, and that you want to be a guest speaker on my Wednesday show or my Monday show, my morning show or my evening show. So you let them know, and they'll line you up. I have a producer that will help you get onto the show and be able to be a participant, because I love to have people talk other than myself, because they have similar things and maybe some things they say could help us. But you're in this room because you wanted to basically get your children back. That's why you're in this room. And when we have a guest speaker, they will tell you ideas of how you can do so. Now, I'm going to tell you about a couple rules during the show. And the first one I'm talking about is you need an attorney. And you say to yourself, why do you need an attorney? Well, being involved in CPS is like having open heart surgery. It's very complex. It's very difficult. You're dealing with social workers that are deceiving, not transparent. They lie, and they want to take your children. And you need an attorney that can navigate and knows the laws in dependency court and in family court, and knows the law with juveniles getting the kids back and so forth. So I say you should have an attorney right away. My mistake is I didn't get an attorney right away because I thought I could fight it myself. Also, I was having financial difficulties, and that's something that common all of you tell me, that I can't get an attorney because I can't afford the money. Well, we have an attorney right now that produces a show. His law firm, Vincent W. Davis and Associates, produces a show. And they have many lawyers at the law firm that deal with legal matters. The lawyer who owns the company, Vincent W. Davis, is a family law attorney. And we just had Rebecca Beckness come in, and she has a show, I guess, called Foster Care, Birth Families Are Suffering. Give us back our rights. I agree. This attorney, Mr. Davis, is a very professional and a great attorney who has worked a long time in this field and has helped hundreds of families get their kids back, and has fought CPS and won. He is a trial attorney, so he has a lot of expertise in law. And I tell you, this rule number one, you have to get an attorney. He is doing something better yet. He is offering a free 30-minute, up to an hour of consultation to talk to him about the strategies of fighting CPS and getting your children. So here's your chance. And I wish I knew about it, because I maybe would have got him sooner. I did eventually hire Mr. Davis to help me bring my family back together. But right now, he's offering this free consultation, and you're gonna know about the strategies, and that's what's important. You don't know what to do or say here, and this attorney is offering it free. And if you like him after you've done it, you should retain him. I did, and I know it involves money, but you need to have somebody, as I said, like a doctor to do open heart surgery. You need a professional lawyer to deal with social services and the child protection services. It is right now, my book, very corrupt. I knew that from my experience with them. And so, anyway, please call into 888-888-6582. Mention that Bob Pace sent you and schedule a time with Mr. Davis. He has a ticket across the bottom of your screen that gives a website. That website is his website that shows his calendar. So if you look at the calendar and you see that there's no buddy booked for a certain day or time, then you can book it. Also, hopefully, it works with your schedule. But anyway, call 888-888-6582. Talk to Mr. Davis. You have nothing to lose. You'll feel a lot better after your talk. And if you can afford him, his retainer is reasonable. He works in Southern California, but he also does Northern California and the 50 states. I know a couple weeks ago he's in Oklahoma. So he does help, because around the country there's so many of you that need an attorney because you don't understand the complexity or the attitude of CPS. And I'm telling you right now, it's a $1 billion business. Their goal is to steal your child and have them adopted by foster care. It's a shame, but in my case, it was true. And over the hundreds of people I talked to, it's been the same way. It's been the same way. So I understand how you feel and everything, but you should get that attorney, because the attorney will ease the stress off you. Because the attorney they think you're going to get, the public defender, is somebody who's fresh, new lawyer who only has a few minutes to talk to you. He's carrying 20 cases at one time or more. And how can he represent you? He'll make wheels and deals, and he's influenced by the lawyers of the social services and the judge. My judge, his background was car repairs and collision claims, meaning he knew all about the areas of how to deal with personal property with automobiles, but he knew nothing about children or family, getting the family back together. It is very sad, but that was my case. Also, when I was in court, I wasn't allowed to be in the courtroom. Either was my wife. We only came in there when there was time to see something had been signed, or we're supposed to sign a form, and they made their decision. We don't know how our public defenders perform. We don't know how the social workers, lawyers perform, or what the judge said or did. It's all mysterious in the room, because what they do is they alienate you from your children. And I use the word alienate because it's against the law to alienate, especially in custody battles, when you have a husband and a wife trying to make the other one look bad so that your children have to decide. That's wrong. Well, CPS does alienation. They try to do that. They're not transparent, meaning once your children are taken, there's no weekly meetings with your child just so that they know what you're doing, or vice versa. There's just the monitor visits or whatever you got going. But it's terrible. It's terrible. They, have alternative motives of things. So as you sit back, and I'm not sure what your case is, but it'd be nice if someone would text something in and tell me what it is, because it's the most excruciating experience in CPS, and I want to help you. And as I said, the number one rule is that you want to get an attorney and not the public defender. You will have to go through lots of public defenders to get one that will work for you. They have a short time and they're not experienced. You need someone that has experience fighting CPS as one. And it's one of those things there. So Daniel Smith is talking about things too. We have lots of people coming into the room with Facebook behind them. They're offering help, I guess. There's lots of people that are coming into the room, so Hopefully, people see the comments. I'm told that the only time they see the comments is if I post it. So I've told you about rule number one. You got to get an attorney, and that's so important. Well, rule number two is a notebook. You probably say a notebook. Yeah, you got to take notes here. You're going to have situations that are going to come down, and you need to remember them. And this case may be 1, 2, 3 years, whatever. My case was 3 years um, strong. And if you have a notebook, you can you can write down the date and time of the incident. Anything that happens related to CPS, you write it down. You write down the date and the time. Then you write down the people involved. There's a social worker, the policeman, the child, you, the father, whatever. You write the names of individuals that are involved in that situation. Then you list the situations such as, stole my child, missed my monitored visitations, my drug test tested positive. Whatever it is, you list that. And then what you do is you put the outcome, what finally resolved. And that final part may not happen for months. So I'm telling you that you need to have that notebook. That's rule number two. Now, the third rule is some common sense and something I should have practiced, but I didn't, is you do not talk to social workers. And if you say anything, they will end up using that against you and trick you. Basically, you can say yes, no answers. And if they say, do you live this place? You say yes. Have you harmed your children? No. You don't want to get in specifics. You don't want to talk to them. You don't have to say anything. Or you can say something that's maybe a bluff, that here's my attorney's number, contact him. Well, that may be attorney's number of attorney you haven't hired or something, but that will give you some time. Also, you can say that you will not say anything unless the attorney's present. So there's lots of options you can do on that, that first step. That first step. Um, Also, in the rule number three, besides saying no, you do not want them in your home. Why? Because they'll see something and use that against you, something so innocently. In my case, when they finally were able to get into my home through me not knowing the law but not living in the home, they saw my parents' furniture and they accused me of neglect with the children. My allegations were coming in from my wife's family members. They wanted to take our children for some long time. And when they heard I got laid off in 2010, that's when they started for 5 years report things that weren't true, and I'd have to diffuse them every time. And I think either the CPS wanted to do revenge or what, but they wanted my kids, and so they used deception to get into my home, and they tricked me. They used the local police, which is common, to do their dirty work, which I think is wrong. And if you have a bad police department, a bad social service, it's terrible. It's a terrible feeling. And I know what you guys are going through, having that feeling and everything. Um, okay, Rebecca, uh, you say was a tax attorney. I don't know what that has to do with CPS, but maybe you can explain to me. You mentioned earlier about adoption for foster care and something about back our rights. Rebecca, if you could tell the city and state you're from and what um, uh, you're doing with CPS, your children, your allegations. We're not here really to talk about taxes. So if you could do that further for me, Rebecca, that'd be appreciated. Um, any of you that um, are going through what I went through, I know how you feel. I know the experience that you have. There's no question about it. Not only do you not have trust in a government entity or your police, you have distrust. And that's brought on by deception about they're doing something wrong, your constitutional rights. Now, I will mention there's the 14th Amendment. And the 14th Amendment um, is not for the use against Donald Trump for whatever he's doing. Um, the 14th Amendment actually has your constitutional rights. The 14th Amendment, it should say, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities citizens of the United States. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law, nor deny any person within the jurisdiction of equal protection of the law. And we have all these amendments in our Constitution. There's no question about that. The 14th Amendment was originally passed by the Senate on June 8th, 1866, and ratified 2 years later on July 9th, 1868. The 14th Amendment granted citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States, including formerly enslaved people, and provide all citizens with equal protection of the law. That's basically what the 14th Amendment was. The section 19, Amendment 14, section 4, allowed the federal and state governments to refuse to pay war debts of Confederate Army, as well as any claims made by slave owners for their losses when they were teamed. So there's a lot of things the 14th Amendment did, and it's important to know the part that that protects us. What makes the 14th Amendment so important? It really prohibits the states from depriving any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law. Now, that is where your rights in CPS. You have the right to be represented by an attorney of your choice. You have a right to refuse entry into your home by others. And I mean like social services with child protection services and the police department. They have to have a thing called a warrant where they will go to court, ask a judge based on the information they provide to the judge that they suspect extreme case of neglect or abuse in the home and they need to investigate it. It has to be extreme. It really has to be extreme there. And then on top of that, it has to be signed by the judge and it's got to specifically name the person and what they're looking for in the home or on your property. Also, if they're going to take a child from you, they need a warrant to take a child. They just can't arbitrarily take children from you. They have to have a court order. And I've heard of so many cases where people are in the hospital room having a child, and in walks the social worker to take the child right after birth. First of all, when you're giving birth, only you, the doctor, and your partner are supposed to be in that room. Where's the ethics by the hospital to allow people randomly, and because they wear a badge or because they say they're a social worker, entails them or gives them the right to march into a hospital to steal a child? They have, see, what is really hard, and I should talk about something called allegations. Allegations are called in either by a professional or a layperson. Now, what I meant by allegations, they're allegations of neglect or abuse. Abuse is some physical trauma to the child, some emotional trauma to the child, some sexual trauma to the child. Those are forms of abuse. Neglect is feeding of the child, supervision of the child, not putting them into school, not dressing them, not bathing them, not providing a shelter, things like that. That is forms of neglect. So that's what they're supposed to okay. Hold on one second here. Okay. Somehow my power cord was plugged out and my computer was telling me some weird stuff. Excuse me for the interruption. So when these are called in, there's certain allegations that are required to be called in. If you're a teacher or a doctor or a nurse, or you are a policeman, a fireman, or anything like that, if you observe any neglect or abuse of children, you're required by law to report it to social service, to the Child Protection Service section. That is a law. That's protected children. Now, let's say you see some bruises on a child and you're a teacher. You're supposed to call it in. Those bruises may be playing a game of soccer and they're hurt by that. The only trouble is when allegations are called in, they're hearsay. They don't have to come with proof or anything. And these allegations are immediately recognized as you're guilty until you're proven innocent. You're guilty till you're proven innocent. That's wrong. Like any court of law, you should be, innocent till you're proven guilty. If they take protective measures, that's fine. But you should not be assumed that you did it. And what's sad is the lay people abuse it. Now, we be able to abuse it is, in my case, my wife's side of the family was calling in for 5 years since I lost that job, reporting something wrong with neglect or abuse of our children. They made up stories. There was no food in the refrigerator. The kids were not being fed. There was no electricity on, no water on. They weren't taking showers. They weren't taken to school. They were locked up in their room. These were things that supposedly family members supposed to love. And this came from the fact in the very beginning, because my wife and I have been together for 32 years. In the beginning of our relationship, they did not want her to leave their home, and they did not like me. And my wife and I fell in love with each other. And after 5 years of courting, we got married. And then we started to have children. But they tried their hardest. They did not show up at the wedding. And It was a miserable, and I had no idea that they would manipulate CPS to their own destructive methods to alienate the children from us, to alienate CPS use alienation. And I bring up the word alienation because it's against the law to alienate anything or anybody. That is found a lot in custody battles where one parent will pit the other parent against each other. That's a no-no. No alienation. But CPS uses alienation. Family members were using alienation. So that is wrong. That is wrong. So these allegations are called in by family members went on for 5 years, and I would show my house. I'd show the refrigerator. I'd show everything. And it was great. There was nothing that I had to hide or anything, and they would drop it. But then again, another call's in. The problem is that if you get a call, you have to respond within 24 hours. It's the law. You have to respond because children are neglected and abused so badly out there. There are bad parents, and there are bad situations. Don't get me wrong, and there's a need for it. But now they've gone overboard. What I think would really help is that anybody that wants to make a complaint, a professional or a layperson, makes it in writing. All they have to do is send a letter via email that I suspect this person doing such and such a thing and sign their name. That way it makes it a little bit more legitimate, and that can be kept in confidence. And also it's in writing. So if they are saying stuff that isn't true, then you have a means of going after them. But hiding behind a phone is deception. And a lot of these cases that were wrong and the parents that suffered through it. I suffered through 3 years when they took my children on that day in 2015. It was terrible. It was terrible what they did and how they did it and how they took my children. And only two of our three children were returned. The third child was so convinced, so alienated from her parents by CPS, so brainwashed, that she thought that foster care was the answer. I mean, she, and I hate to say it, was a Barbie girl living a Barbie world. We spoiled her. You see, I had Disneyland passes for all my children. Every year we renewed them. And our outings were going to Disneyland. And that was a luxury item. And so we did trips. A 2-week of vacation I took my family. We did everything as a family. We never went out dad and mom dates. We should have done that. But we always took our children on any kind of a function we do on. We did a lot of traveling to other countries, to other parts of the United States. We were a family. And at that time, when CPS got involved, when I lost my job, my youngest son was 9, my daughter was 12, and my oldest son was 15. So we had one in high school, one in middle school, and one in elementary school. And so it was really very hard and frustrating to deal with allegations that the CPS think are true. And of course, when I showed them their food, showed them the utility bills paid, showed them their good grades in school, all the stuff that the family members were allegating were disproven. And so that's how the cases always start, with the allegations. And they should be in writing, whether they're professional or lay people, because I think it's a little bit more taken seriously. And it doesn't take long to write something. It doesn't take long to transmit something. Yes, a phone call is easy to make, but so is an email. So is an email. And if you don't have the email of the CPS, you can call the CPS and ask them, what is your email to allege a complaint against neglect or abuse? But CPS uses the phone, and I think most people do it, to make the process go supposedly quicker and faster, wherever it is. But I don't think that's right because I suffered, my wife suffered, our family, our kids suffered. They destroyed a perfect functional family. The only problem we had in our life at that time was finances. And finances were caused by factors I had no control over. When I lost my job, it wasn't because of my performance, I wasn't doing any good. It's because the state of California in 2010 was at financial hardships, and the work that I was doing for the state of California was public work contracts in roads and highways, heavy civil engineering. And I get these jobs, and then we get paid for doing these jobs. But the state of California decided that the way they cut corners was to write IOUs on those jobs, which was illegal, and save the money and come back and do the job. So they were manipulating funds that were public funds, and that was wrong. And at my company, we didn't have enough money to fight them. It really was kind of a catch-22. Also, I had a perfect storm brewing. Not only did I have lost my job, several years before that, in 2007, the banks, 3 years earlier, were failing. And why were the banks failing? Well, because they're giving out predatory loans. And what were predatory loans? They're loans given out to people where the documents and the incomes were changed so they would qualify for the loans. And why were they doing this? Well, the the reason being is that the people given the loans got a lot of money in signing up your loans. They made a lot of money, and they were unscrupulous. It's very easy for them to qualify you for your loan and for a credit line. That happened to me. I had a predatory loan. I did not know that. I later found that my documents, my income was doubled, and my documents were altered by the lender. And anyway, there's all these predatory loans out there, and the banks crashed and were floundering. So I had that issue with mine because I had a humongously first mortgage and a credit line. I had over $1 million that I was responsible for paying. And when you lose your job and you have $1 million, it's hard. It's hard. I don't know how Trump is going to pay all the money he has. He has two judgments, I think, of 350 and $390 million. I mean, you're talking $7 million, $700 million. I mean, close to almost $1 billion. So anyway, when I lost my job and I had that predatory loan that I had to pay, and on top of that, also in 2007, when lenders were going bankrupt, the stock market crashed. And the company that had my retirement, I lost half of my 40 years of retirement. I lost probably a good $300,000 on my retirement because they invested in the wrong stocks and so forth. What the retirement was an owner's retirement, and you had a committee, a group of individuals from work that would try to invest your money. And I wasn't on the committee, and you trust them. So I lost half of my retirement. I had a predatory loan. I had lost my job. And then I had these allowed complaints that CPS is involved. Well, those things are bad enough as it is. I mean, that is definitely a perfect storm. But I had one other variable that came into play. Not only did I lose half my retirement, I had a predatory loan and lost my job, and I was involved in child protection services. A fifth thing happened. My parents were getting old and they wanted to liquidate their things, their items in their home. They wanted help. And I was the closest living relative to where they're at. My sister, my older sister, she was in assisted living. She couldn't do much. My other sister was in the islands, and that's far away, and she had a low income. She couldn't afford all the air flights. She did come over to help out mom and dad a lot. Don't get me wrong, but I was there, and you're probably wondering what in the hell or what in the way do these parents' belongings have to do with your CPS case? Well, that's where I should tell you so you get more of an understanding. Um, Before I go and tell you that story or continue that story, I do want to reach out to any of you listeners that to please call in at 626-698-0990. That way you speaking instead of me about your story and maybe help out and so forth. Also, if you don't want to speak now and you want to speak later, you can call 888-888-6582. Speak to my office. Say Bob Pace sent you and you want to speak on one of my 14 shows. As I said earlier, is that you can also text a comment. All I need is your city and your state and your name, what the allegations are, and your children, so that I can better help you on your case if you have something in there. We've had several people uh, um, attempt to make a comments, but they didn't give a name of the city or state, and they were saying stuff that had nothing to do with uh, child protection services. I'm still waiting for Rebecca Beckness to tell me the state and what your CP allegations are and the children involved, so I can help you there, Rebecca. Um, I don't know if you have another agenda, but two previous people I had to remove from the comment section because they had another agenda going on. You remember rule number 1 I talked about? Get an attorney. You'll need an attorney. And again, I remind you all that Vincent W. Davis is offering you a free consultation for 30 minutes up to an hour to help you strategize and navigate through CPS to get your children back, how to fight CPS. You need to call in at 888-888-6582 and tell them that Bob Pace sent you and schedule a time and a date that works for you and for him. He has a calendar. It's on a ticket stream below the screen there. He gives a website. That's his calendar. Check it out and see if a date he's available, you're available, and then you can set your appointment. It'll be well worth the hour or 30-minute session you spend with him. It will save you a lot of anguish and stuff because you need to speak to an attorney. And he's the good one to do it. He's a trial attorney. He's a family law attorney. He's been doing this a long time. He has even sued CPS in one cases. He's gotten kids back. He's fought CPS in one. So he's a good attorney to get. And after you get done with him, you should retain him. Also, when you talk to him, tell him that Bob Pace sent you. That's really important. To get him is 888-888-6582. Don't forget to call in. Don't forget to call in. Well, I was talking about my story here, and the story that finally broke the camel's back was after 5 years of these allegations that were found to not be true, something with CPS triggered them off, and they insisted on seeing this extreme conditioning happen in my home. They've been in my home before, so I don't know what they're looking for. But when I brought my parents' belongings into my home, that's the part that got me in trouble. Now, I don't think they knew I did that because I don't know, maybe they're watching the home and watching me load the stuff in the house, wondering why in the world am I taking chairs or furniture and boxes. And that's what I did. I first tried to put everything out front nice and orderly on the garage apron and put a tarp over it. I thought that's the best way to figure out what to do. My ideal situation was to get it off to family members right away or put in storage. But storage is out of the question because that costs money. I didn't have money to rent a lot of storage units. So, um, I had that stuff out there for a bit on the car apron. And then I received notice from the association that runs our community. We're in a private community with CCNRs. They said you cannot put things stored out in front of your home. You need to bring it in the home, in the garage, out of view. So what I proceeded to do is move the stuff in the home, in the garage, in the home, and on my front porch and in my yard, which could not be seen from the common area. And move the stuff in. And when I moved the stuff in, I had to stack the boxes and stack the furniture. Well, when finally CPS used deception to get into my house because I was not allowed to see my house because I knew my parents' furniture would be a problem, they charged me and my wife with neglect. Neglect. They were saying that the clutter of my family's furniture could harm the children, could possibly harm the children. Didn't say he harmed them. And I have pictures of watching the boxes fly upstairs. We had a huge high voltage ceilings, and each child had their own bedroom. And these boxes would go in there and hurt them. Or the furniture would walk up the stairs and go and hurt them. That was, that was my thinking there, and that's how ridiculous it was to say that my parents' belongings were extreme enough for them to take my children. Not only did they trick me to get in the home, they also tricked me to take my children. It happened because a detective, the CPS office contacted the local police, said they wanted their help to get inside the home. Now, the police were duped because they were saying, and I still don't know this day, what was so extreme that they had to get into my home. I don't know what they were looking for. They wouldn't say. They're very deceptive. They don't say anything. So they conned the police. And so what the police did is they got a detective involved. The detective heard from CPS that I have a child in school. So he came to school to watch me pick up my child. And I didn't go right home right at first because I was going to pick up my wife. So I drove to go pick up my wife. And 15 minutes later, he pulls me over. Not him, but he got a black and white vehicle to pull me over. And he used his traffic division to stop me. Now, why he did not pull me over right away, I don't understand. I don't understand why he did so long. Maybe he was trying to see, he's being a detective, want to know if I was doing something illegal or something. I don't know. Because something that CPS said to them is that it was an extreme case and they had to investigate. And it was tough. It was really tough. So I'm driving along and a black and white goes by me. All of a sudden it makes a U-turn and lights come on. Well, I'm taught that if lights are come on, pull over the side of the road, stop if it's a police vehicle, and and put your hands on the steering wheel so they see your hands. And I said nicely to him, "What can I do for you, officer?" And his first words out of his mouth was, instead of being friendly or anything, he was sitting there because apparently the policeman and the detective heard something awful from CPS. But he said, "You ran a stop sign." I said, "What? You're pulling me over to run a stop sign?" I said, "Wait a minute. I'm thinking in my head. The only stop sign I knew was about 5 miles back near the school because I'd already gone past 3 traffic lights." And I said, "This is the most ridiculous." I said, "No, I did not run the stop sign." And at that time, he said, "There's a gentleman that wants to talk to you." See, with me stopped on the road, I could have pulled off and gone off. And I don't know what the police would have done. But I was told that he should have just given me a citation for running the stop sign, and then I could answer that and settle that in court. The detective couldn't stop me because detectives are not set up to stop and everything like that. The detective also needed a search warrant or something to go back to my home. He didn't have those things. I did not know that. The rule number 3 that I told you about, I don't know that. And no one really knows a lot of things that the police can do and not do, and social workers can do and not do. And that is sad because instead of them being honest or being, caring about this guy who had lost his job, and I was 65 at the time. And I did get a job. I've had several jobs since then, but I've lost it again. I'm 74, still looking. I need to work. Why? I lost my home because I had to sell it. And the money that I made off the home, I used to pay my attorney. And I lost my retirement, half of it, and I used that to pay my attorney. And so there's some inheritance money too. I learned I used a lot of money for my attorney. So anyway, this detective who had got his traffic enforcement to pull me over said after he told me that he tells me instead of introduce himself or I'm detective, and he had no problem seeing that he was somebody important. He was decked in combat fatigues, big boots, and detectives, and he looked really ferocious. He said, "You follow me." I said, "Why? Where are we going?" "We're going back to your home." I said, "Why go home?" He wouldn't tell me. He was supposed to tell me. Your constitutional rights are being violated again. It seems like the police and the social services and the CPS don't care about your rights. They don't care about you as a person. The CPS goal is to make money off your children. That's the only reason. And that is from firsthand experience, by the way. And that's from listening to over 100 people here telling me the same scenario, whether it's Maine, North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, Tennessee, Kentucky, Texas, Minnesota. I also had Australia and Canada, United Kingdom, and Ghana. All these places have said the similar thing, that CPS takes their children, that CPS is making money off the children. I'm talking big bucks. I don't know, $20,000, $25,000 per child per month they get from the federal government and the state. I don't know how much the state's doing or how much the federal, but they get a lot of money. And it doesn't take $25,000 to house and feed a child. And the money's got to go somewhere. And during my case, I saw where it went. It went to a building that looks like the Taj Mahal. It's in Southern California, and it's where the headquarters of the director, who I did try to talk to, that I told him I was being violated and what they're saying was ridiculous. And I talked to the supervisors there. I had numerous meetings, but it went nowhere. Fighting CPS is a big mistake. All you do is you get attacked and it'd be worse, their case. I think that's why those 5 years, they were constantly coming out and they were finding nothing, that they're so frustrated they had to get me somewhere. Well, now I've followed the detective to my home, and out front of my yard is 2 code enforcement people, 5 firemen, 3 social workers, 2 uniformed policemen, and a detective. Why do I need all these people here? Am I that bad of a criminal? I mean, I've seen other cases. This is worse than a SWAT team coming out. And my house was not on fire. No one had broken into it. So why they had to see something in the home that was supposedly extreme neglect or abuse of my children. And like a fool, I should have asked for if they had a warrant. Or I said, you cannot come in this home. And I didn't know the law. So this time I let them in. And now I let them in. And now they see my family's belongings. And you're probably wondering, well, what should that be important? Well, they charge me with neglect. They are saying that the boxes of furniture could attack the children. And that's wrong. That's why you don't let them in your house. They're trying to find something. And they thought it was so extreme that they took our children from us. That same day they took the children. They picked up the other 2 children at school. How would you like to be a daughter or son of a family and suddenly you're picked up school, and they don't tell you anything. Our kids were left in the dark. They were left in the dark the whole time they're in CPS's custody for 3 years. It's part of their alienation that CPS. It's sad. It's really, 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 really sad. So it got really bad, and I want you all to understand it's the most terrible feeling for a husband and wife to have no control over a situation. Again, I say it's very important to have that rule number one, that attorney, because you could call them, you could say, contact my attorney. I'm not letting you in this home and stuff. It would alleviate me. Again, Mr. Davis is a good family law attorney. He can be uh, reached at 888-888-6582. That's the office. Make sure you send Bob Pace to me. He's offering a free 30-minute to an hour consultation where he will, um, meet with you and strategize with you how to beat CPS and how to get your kids back. He's a trial attorney. He's been doing this a long time. He's even won cases suing CPS. He goes Southern California, Northern California, and all the 50 states. His retainer is on a sliding scale. It's based on the complexity of the case, how long the case has been going on, and where the case is located. And it's very reasonable, and I'm glad I did it. I lost my home because I gave all my money to my attorney, but I got 2 of my 3 children back. And I already explained why the other child's not back, because she was brainwashed to think that she could be with a family that would give her that Disneyland passes and all the things that I was restricting my family from because I lost my job. It's very hard when you lose your job, especially at the age of 60, because they think you're too old. Right now, there's discussions right now that people at 74 or 75 have to be recertified as a human being. And this is the politics. And, you have this girl preaching that our 2 president candidates are too old. Now, some of you are young listeners. I know that. In fact, probably most of you are. Some of you are old. There's nothing wrong with old people. They're wise. They got a lot of years they can gather information and share it. So there's nothing wrong with them. And so long if they're able to get around and talk and understand things, they're fine. There's fine. Nothing wrong with being old. But losing a job has been a stigma in my industry of hiring me. And it's really hard for me to find work out there and have a good income and so forth. But you should hire a attorney. And as I say, you got nothing to lose with meeting with Vincent Davis for 30 minutes or an hour. Again, that number is 888-888-6582, which is the same number that you can call to be a guest in the show and have yourself talk about your case. Yes, I do talk about my case. I never get tired of it, but I notice that a lot of people will come in and then they hear the same thing and they watch me later anyway. This is a recording too. So if you missed it, you can see it again. There's no question about there. We're just about out of the time right now. And I did get my 2 children back. I lost my daughter. And I've talked to you about the 3 rules and things there. There's other forms and other paper matters I'd like to talk to you about the next time. But I hope your case goes well. I know you love your children. Don't give up. Still fight. And I want you the best of luck in the new year. Much happiness, too. I want you to be really happy this new year and still fight for your kids and love your kids. Love your family. It's so important to love your family. I still love my family. And it's something that I want to still take care of my family. Okay, God bless. I'll see you tonight. This is Bob Pace, your host, signing off.